What's going on, YouTube? Thanks for tuning into the channel. Coming to you with a video here about how do you know when you're ready for your breakthrough, to receive whatever you got that's been coming to you. Really, this one is something that comes, as always, just from what's going on in my mind right now. But before I jump into it, as always, like, comment, subscribe, dislike, leave some negative comments. Any feedback will do. Just throw them down below, whatever you want to do to interact. But jumping into this, how do you know when you're ready for your breakthrough? As always, the format is going to be give you the summary up front, then apply it to my life towards the end. So the summary in the beginning is going to start with number one: timing is everything. So if you ever heard of the term divine timing, whatever you believe, just really that the universe in itself has a timing for things to happen. You know what I mean? Like, you can't plant a plant in the ground and then expect a tomato plant, if it's a tomato seed, to sprout overnight, or if you plant it during winter, it's not coming out any in the next coming month. Things of that sort. So timing is everything, and everything happens in its right time. So whatever your fate, if you will, and I'll kind of get deeper into that in a second, whatever your fate is, it's going to happen in the time that it needs to happen. Now, I do believe, obviously, that you have free will to change things. I just look at things as like an infinite amount of possibilities based on what you do to interact with the world, and the way that the world responds back to that is what your fate is. And you can basically alter your fate, and at any point, if we were in like a higher dimension where time didn't exist, there'd be like almost all of these potential endings to the book. Just like if you've ever read Goosebumps, I remember that in Goosebumps there's multiple endings to the book. Depending on what decision you made, you jump to a certain page, and then that would become, you know, what the ending of the book was. But you could have made a different choice at any particular time and changed the ending of the book. That's how I look at fate. So whatever your fate is, whatever you ultimately want your fate to be, that has a timing that is already not so much established, but a way that needs to unfold, that you just need to trust that things are happening, one, in the right time. And honestly, and I don't want to get too much into my feelings at this point, but like during that time, you're definitely going to feel like it's taking too long. There's nothing that I've ever wanted hard, and I would like basically say this is probably the truth to anybody else. Things that you want a lot, there's always some sort of distance. And in our culture, specifically in this day and time, we get things so immediately that I think it actually accentuates this distance between where we are and what we ultimately want, or what we want to receive. So that interim time will always feel longer than it is, especially when you look at things from, you know, the before it happens to hindsight. Like when I look at anything that's happened in the past, and I can use like my wrestling career in high school. You know, when I was a freshman, you know, graduating high school in general just seemed a long time away, let alone all of the matches I would wrestle throughout the period of time. Now when I look back on it, that whole period of time is like a blip. It happened so fast that and now that I'm older as well, that when you're 14 compared to 32, 1 year is a lot more of your life than it is at 32, where you've been through these seasons, these things have changed, you know kind of what's on the other end. With that being said, prior to you receiving what you want to receive, the timing will always seem very long. So that's the first part in knowing you're ready. The second part is going to be the fate piece. So that there's no other choice for this to happen. And this is going to be really the meat and potatoes of like, how do you know? The rest are going to speak around it, as the beginning is more the beginning, and then the next point will be the end. But how do you know is when there's no other choice, this is just your fate. And the main marker of this is going to be when you're completely congruent, when you are the person that receives the thing. Now, many of us, if we're honest with ourselves, whatever our ideal is, there is a bit of a gap to that. Now, there's two main portions to this. That one, acknowledging the gap, that if there is a gap, that's probably a big reason why your time has not come, that you have not become the person that receives what you need to receive. So you need to keep trying to fill that particular gap. But on your way to it, and this is kind of touching into the third point, is that you want to focus more on the gains you're making than the gap itself. Because the gap itself is going to make you feel depressed, and it's always going to get you down. And if you're talking in ideals, as humans, we generally create a new ideal before we even reach the first ideal. So you could halfway get to this ideal, and then your new ideal moves here. So the gap has remained the same in terms of like legitimate distance, but the distance you've crossed to the first ideal, you're significantly closer to that. So you need to focus on that to keep your spirits up and keep yourself moving through. And throughout, kind of even that timing piece, the universe will give you what I call checkpoints. Like when you're on that path, there will be certain things that happen in your life that are almost inexplicable in terms of the timing of it when it comes and what it has to do. And it's generally like it's an olive branch that's given. It's like you've jumped off the cliff, to break your fall, because the road that you've embarked on is going to be a little bit bumpy. You're fighting against gravity. We're going to give you an olive branch you can hold on to for a second, catch your footing, so you can navigate the rest of this fall as you go through. And as you become more and more congruent, more and more checkpoints will start to arise. Now, I'm not going to say that there's not going to be any obstacles or issues that come along, but when you're congruent, it is inevitable that you're going to reach your fate. And when you are congruent, you've removed all other alternatives. Now, this is, and it's very difficult for me not to apply it to my life in some particular fashion, even in the description, because it's like a lot of the times, the thing that's holding you back is your doubt that you can actually be what you idealize in I think idealize is the word I'm looking for. Idealize in your mind. And when you leave those alternatives on the table and you're dabbling in those alternatives, you're sending a mixed message to the universe. Also to yourself, if you don't want to view it always into the universe section. Like, you're giving mixed results to yourself, and it's harder for you to really follow who should I be listening to. But when you metaphorically burn the boats, you burnt the bridge, there is no going back. You've crossed the Rubicon. There is no going back. So it's only move forward and deal with the obstacles that lay ahead instead of dwelling on the possibilities if you went back. And that also frees up energy. And that's also one of these pieces where you're truly congruent. Like, you've given up the alternatives. Like, this is who you are. And for better or worse, I'm going to get the fruits of being who I want to be. Now, I'm not going to say that everything's always going to happen exactly the way you imagined it. I actually will probably say generally things will not happen the way you imagine it. Everything I've ever achieved in my life has been slightly different than what I originally set out on. Generally, that result is better in terms of whether it's wisdom that I learn or the actual fruit that I'm given is better, but it won't happen exactly how you want. But that's how you know that you're ready, is when you totally become congruent. There are no other alternatives. You are who that person is. And then, as I mentioned, inexplicably things are going to somewhat fall into place, kind of connecting to that law of least effort video that I put together prior, that is going to make this happen. And just brief caveat, I'm not somebody I don't think I've achieved inhuman things. I've achieved certain things in my life for sure, but I don't want to ever speak like I'm the prophet. These are just things I believe, the ways that I move for myself, because I do think on YouTube specifically, or just in general when you look on social media, people speak like they know too much. They're so sure of the information that they're saying, when it's this is just how I live, and I've noticed these things as I move through life, and I'm sharing it with you, but I'm always a questioner. If for whatever reason the things I believe start to find evidence that is contrary, that I believe in that more, just know that I will change things up. But that's just a small caveat. And the third thing is that the day-to-day is going to be the hardest piece of this whole thing. This is a concept I say all the time. This is something that my mom used to say to me all the time. And it's that in the day-to-day, as I mentioned before, there's a gap. So there's going to have to be a period of time that you have an ideal, you're not the ideal, you're working towards the ideal, but your environment is spitting back to you not the ideal. And that will cause a ton of cognitive dissonance. It can lead to depression, frustration. It can lead to apathy in terms of giving up. It can even lead to retreat, running away. And all of those responses are not the most productive response if reaching your ideal is what you want to do. That's why a lot of people like to get, for lack of a better term, fucked up. They like to get you drunk, high, just mindless doom scrolling, anything, hanging out excessively, just being around others, never being around your own thoughts. A lot of this is because people have an ideal, and I think that the human mind will force it to come up, and then you don't want to live up to that for whatever reason, or you don't think it's achievable. It's probably the bigger one, and you have the goal of incapacitation and being incapacitated instead of having to work towards something. Now, when I say these ideals, goals, the breakthrough that you're looking for, I also do want to throw in a caveat that it doesn't need to be something that society is 100% like pushing as the ideal you want. Because I think that's another piece that messes people up, is that they want something that they don't really want, so when they have to do the work to get it, that can lead to something to mess up. But that's once again the day-to-day. So having a really good idea of what you're trying to receive is of utmost importance. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I have other videos that kind of talk about things of that sort, because that's outside the scope. This is for people that already know, and they're like, you're working towards something, you're waiting on it, you're feeling these feelings, and it's not happening in the time. And that is what I would say is the day-to-day grind to make it rhyme, Throw little bars at you right there. The day-to-day is the hardest part. But what I would say is the easiest way to get out of that is to start to focus on the current moment. So focusing on the current moment, or the now, is really the key. Because your life is basically just a listing, or just a consecutive amount of present moments. And a lot of the times what we do, and I know that this is, and I'm just going to use this part because this is the part that's really like the struggle for me, is that a lot of the times we like to project into the future, and we'll project the future worst case scenario. And when you have the worst case scenario, it kind of, one, if you think about, your thoughts being things and interacting with the universe, that is going to attract some of the negative worst case scenario towards you. Now also on the flip side, it also brings you down in just general. It makes what you're dealing with seem so insurmountable. If I told you to walk 100 miles and you've never walked 100 miles, that would be very hard. But if I told you just put your right foot in front of your left foot and then put your left foot in front of your right foot, very achievable. And if every day I just had you, let's just walk a block, let's just walk a mile, over time, you would be making steps towards it. And it goes back to that gap in the game thing that I was saying before, which does come from another book by, I think the guy's name is Dan Strutzel. But essentially, instead of always looking at how much work you have to do, just look at the work you have to do now. Instead of looking at how much work you have to do to achieve what you're looking to achieve, look at the work you've done and look at the work you have to do now. Because that stuff is going to positively motivate you. Look at how much I've already done. Look at all I have to do. And then once you do a lot of those things, you will eventually close the gap that you are looking to close. So focusing on the present moment is key. And then also, instead of dreaming about the worst case scenario, to use some of Joe Dispenza's logic, you want to view the future dream scenario. So instead of focusing on so much, if this doesn't happen and this happened, I need this to happen, and I need that to happen, I need this to happen, I need that to happen. Yeah, plan things out. then just decide, okay, this is what I got to do today and this week for this to be a good week. Okay, I'm going to plan the rest of my following week the next week. I kind of have a general projection of the month, but I'm not going to focus there because I know that's going to get me down. I'm going to focus on what I got to do now, what I got to do this week, and make sure that those things happening. As obviously, as long as nothing crazy is going to happen in this week. But for example, for me, my issue is like not something that's going to be solved tomorrow, in a month, probably not in 6 months, maybe not even in a year, but I am working on it. Certain things need to happen to keep going, but like I can't project what's going to happen in 3 months. Why am I worrying about something in 3 months when it's like all the things I was worrying about for the last 3 months, none of the bad stuff even happened. So it's like all that stressing, when I look back at it, is for nothing. But now looking at the dream scenario, I can look at ultimately what I want to be. Maybe I don't know how that's going to happen, but in 1 to 2 years, which is far enough out that I can really like believe it, even though I don't know the steps that are going to lead to it, I can just imagine what it's like to be that person, how that person is, how they act, and focus on that, which is once again going to bring me up. But then on the flip side, if you believe in all of this like frequency, thoughts or things, and law of attraction stuff, those thoughts are going to pull that reality closer to me. So it's having like kind of like a twofold effect, where it's like instead of doing what we generally do, which is dream of the worst case scenario all day, and that's not beneficial, why don't you spend your time dreaming of your dream scenario, and then all of your focus is just on the present moment, short term, near future, in terms of what you're going to do for that. Now, the next piece I want to jump into here is really about that thought process once again. So it's like all you have is the present now. Who you are is only the present now. You are not the past, you're not the future. But you can interact through your mind with your future and past self. So how you interact with your future self is through your dream scenarios, your dream futures, or even your worst case scenarios. Whatever you're dreaming about, how you're going to react to something in the future is you actually interacting with your future self. Now, your interactions with your past self is through your memories. So it's through your memories, but all of that is only being done during the now. So really the time you need to cherish the most is the now and how you're operating in the now. You can speak towards your future self through your dreams, and through your memories you can also speak to your old future self, which becomes the past once that now has passed beyond it, and then also talk to your past self through your memories in there to kind of corroborate what's happening. So you do actually get to interact with all of the versions of yourself throughout time. You just only have the ability to actually interact with them now. But if you start to look at things from that perspective, for me at least, there's some kind of like calming effect that it's like, all I really got to focus on is just keeping my head right now, because in all of these dream scenarios, things work out. And whenever I look at things in the past, they worked out. So I'm the constant, and I'm always figuring it out. I'm always landing on my feet. And when I just keep my eyes right in front of me, the problems never seem so big or so daunting. The only time I really feel like issues is when I look at the past through the lens of who I am now and sometimes regret what I did, which, why are you doing that? Because generally it's not a big deal. And then when I look to the future and I look at how much I have to do to become what I need to do, or to make sure something bad doesn't happen, it's like a lot of those things never happen. I think Abraham Lincoln has that famous quote that's like, I've been through, or maybe it was Mark Twain, but it's like, I've been through many terrible things in my life, only some of which have happened. And that idea that you like ponder all these things and then you get to the moment and it's never as bad as the moment actually was. And then even in my past, I can think about how I was as a past self, and it's generally a lot of these anxieties, even if the problems were perceptually smaller from the standpoint that I have now, in the moment they felt freaking huge. So I was still running through this anxiety even though I got through all of these things pretty unscathed. It's not like there's been cataclysmic repercussions for any decision that I've made throughout time. Now it's just fully into just my the application to my life. It's like the decisions that I made specifically with buying this house and the subsequent events that like unfolded afterwards, you know, having somebody demo my house and walk out. And once again, this might sound like I'm reliving the past, which I'm not. I'm just really trying to kind of share the perspective with you. Somebody demoing my house and then leaving on the job. I had to like learn and fix all of that and pay all the money to make all that work. Then getting laid off from my job for about 9 months. There's been certain things with like the way, you know, taxes and insurance work that I didn't understand, which added a few $100 to my monthly payment. And just a lot of learning curves with the decision that I made. A lot of the times it felt like I was suffocating, like especially before I got another job. I did not know how this was going to unfold, or theoretically I could have been making videos and making things go forward towards my ultimate dream ideal, which I didn't, which it's like I'm not going to beat myself up on it. It's something that happened. It's something I can assess it and think of, and that's really where, for me, at this point, it's do or die. There is no alternative. Like, I know that if I don't do this now, I'm probably never going to do it. So that's why I've been consistent this whole year about getting these videos up weekly. Even if I miss my prospective date, I do get them up. I am being focused in that sense. And that's how I know that it will be my time very shortly coming forward, is that like, this is the answer. This is the only answer I have, and it's the answer I'm going to follow and move forward with. And that's a huge perspective there. And when I do meditate and think to myself, it's like, I am the person that I wanted to be for the most part if I look 10 years earlier. Like, there's nothing I've done, I've exceeded a lot of what I had imagined. Now, I think that maybe I wasn't thinking big enough with what I feel like I need and will be satisfied with at that period. And maybe 10 years in the future, I'll feel the same once again. But when I look at myself throughout time, I've always figured it out. The one thing that I would wish and want to work on more is that I just don't think that I necessarily enjoy all the time. Like, I will be flat out honest on this video that like probably for the past 2 to 3 years, like, and it's not like I'm gonna jump off the roof or something, but I've had a mild, what I would call like a mild depression probably for the last 2 or 3 years, where it's like I'm just down, I'm just in a funk, I'm just down, I'm just in a funk. And I think a lot of it has to do with this, you know, the day-to-day piece, feeling like, you know, my time should have come. But then I have to look back and it's like, am I really congruent with the person that gets those things? And then you go back to your memories and then the regrets and then certain decisions you've made, and maybe you didn't make the right decision, where it's like, I could be living a very much easier life had I never made the decision to purchase the house. I had a lot of money I was sitting on, wasn't really responsible for a lot, but every time I walk outside and I see the backyard and I see my dog running around, I'm like, but this is what you wanted. Like, this is what you wanted and what you want. Like, and am I going to run away from that because the road seems hard? Or am I going to double down to be more congruent into the person that deserves the things that I want? Because at the end of the day, it sounds dumb, but it's like, you want to get what you want. You don't want to get what other people say is reasonable. And sometimes you might have dreams that are unreasonable to others, and they will put that pressure on you that you're making the wrong decisions. When, as long as you stay the course and stay congruent to your faith, and have faith in the fact that things will unfold in the way that is necessary for you to reach that, screw what other people are thinking or what you perceive they're thinking or the pressures you perceive them putting on you. Because that's really where, for me, and this whole video comes from, is that, especially over the weekend, I kind of went through like a weird funk where it was just like I was very much doubting the decisions I made, and I'm a hard worker, and it's like you're putting all this work in, but are you really seeing the fruits of your benefits? I mean, the fruits of your labor, the benefits of the things you've done? And in some ways, yes, but it kind of goes back to that day to day. Like, I'm in the grind. It does feel like it's a long time coming, but eventually it has to flip over. That's like the way time works, that's the way fate works, and that's just what I truly believe. As I mentioned before, it's like I'm not over here trying to like convince people and get them to my side if you believe in things differently, but it's like I know that the effort, the thoughts, the energy, the time that I put into things, even these videos, even though there's not a ton of people watching it, I know the things I'm saying, the content is deep if somebody was there to listen and cares to listen. And I know that putting this work out doesn't go completely unrewarded, and yes, I have to keep pushing forward. Yes, there's things I could do better, but all that to say that everything happens in its right time. You know, things will happen when there's no other real choice. That is the path of least resistance for things to happen. It is your fate. And at the end of the day, the day-to-day, the daily grind is going to be the hardest part. But the day-to-day is really who you are. So that's the piece that you really need to work to enjoy, so that when you do have these memories, you don't have regrets on feeling too anxious or overwhelmed about working through the day to day, like trying to learn to enjoy the day to day. And that's something that's like really like a word to me, that, you know, enjoying your life and enjoying, it's like the Navy SEALs say, I know my coach in MMA, like embracing the suck, and really just seeing it, like enjoying that you have the ability to even feel these bad emotions, and work through them, and that at the end of everything, when you do receive what you've been waiting to receive, it'll be that much sweeter because of what you had to go through to get it. And you don't want to look back and feel like, you know, I wasted this period of time being upset, even though I got what I wanted. But when I look back at how I was during that time, it was just stressed out. And that's kind of like the main message for myself, is like I've been going through these bouts of like super stressed out, feeling almost like there's a weight on your chest and you can't breathe, having trouble going to sleep, where your mind is just racing, when it's just like, just think about putting that one foot in front of the other. Just work on the day-to-day, just work on being congruent, and at the end of the day, things are going to happen in the right timing. Things are going to happen because they have to happen. There's no other alternative, and that ultimately is your fate. So that's really it for this one. It's a little bit longer, went a little bit on some tangents here and there. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like the content, like, comment, subscribe. You didn't like, leave some negative comments, dislike the video. And as always, y'all know what it is. Until next time, peace out.